Hey, Rani here. Shall we make a game? Now, it may surprise you to hear this from someone who's apparently spent, like the last God knows how long being sick. I am sick today, so I might be a bit scratchy, a bit quiet, and I don't know. We'll see where we end up. So last time we got into the movie theater, but we didn't do anything else. So we need kind of like a pile of popcorn here we can interact with. So I'm going to get blender open the right blender, that usually helps. Hopefully this isn't too insufferable a stream because I am not well at all. Okay, I'd like to grab the edge of that. There we go. Thank you, blender. Sorry, just sorting a few things out. There we go. Okay, so a separate object kind of here-ish for the pile of popcorn. This is going to need textures. Let's open that texture editor. So it's basically going to be like a upside down box on top of a kind of like a very flattened cone, I think. That's probably how I'm going to model it. Yeah. Let's put it there, so snap our cursor to that. What we're doing, completely not awake at all. So yeah, I'm just gonna go for a cone. Not that way up, if you please. Definitely not that way up. That way up. And I don't think we're gonna have a pile of popcorn this big. That'd be be a little excessive, wouldn't it? Let's crank it way down. Yep, that's a good start. And I'm just going to split each of these. Oh, it won't let me loop select them because it's got a shared vertex, so it's not technically a loop. So divide that and get rid of the half that lies beneath the surface. And that's our starting point. And now we're just going to drop in a cube. Again, that's absolutely massive. Scale it down quite a lot. Let's stretch one side of it out. Scale it down slightly to give it that kind of taper that they tend to have. And again, we're going to cut this in half. And what we have looks more like okay, it looks kind of like we basically took a bucket of sand and upended it, which isn't quite what I was going for, but we'll figure it out. Maybe slightly less tall than that. And reposition it slightly so it's more plausible. It's kind of float out of the box. And there we go. What a masterpiece of 3D modeling that is. So next up, we need to unwrap it. It shouldn't take super long. How's that going to look in the scene? Oh, that might be actually slightly too small. I'm just going to bring in a character model as a kind of like a comparison point. Oh, they kind of all end up in a heap over here. Oh well, we only need one of them. Yeah, that's way too small. Let's scale it up by like a factor of 2. That's going to be slightly oversized, but given it's something you're meant to interact with, it's probably good to draw attention to it and making it massive. So the reason I wanted to go to texture view is I wanted to get like a rough idea of how the texel density compares between this and the surrounding objects. It is, again, probably going to be very, very slightly higher just because, well, it's something you can interact with, but probably not that, probably not too high. Oh, actually, let's move this off axis slightly as well. So kind of like that. So it's almost kind of like it sort of, had some momentum when it hit the floor. Okay. Next up, we need to add some seams to it. And then we press the magic button that makes all the unwraps happen for us. And my god, that feature is still absolutely amazing all these years later. Now, one side of this we're not going to be able to see, so I'm just going to get rid of that actually. Okay, next up we need to do another unwrap on that and start hammering it into pixels. So that's way too high resolution. Look at the size of that pixel compared to that one. It's probably at half, which is convenient because that actually fits in the texture sheet, whereas the other one didn't. And again, I'm just going to have to kind of like sort of just scribble in roughly the right places and do comparisons back and forth until I get to fill the UV island. Wow, that was a good guess, wasn't it? That was like near enough down to the pixel. That doesn't normally happen. Something must be wrong. Is this real? Can someone check for me? Yeah, today's been one of those days actually where you kind of like, things happen, you sort of like, wait, is this real? Like, yeah, this is, you know, someone wrote this, this utter nonsense I'm currently experiencing into a movie script or something. No one would believe it. It's just, yeah, so without logic or reason. Nothing like bad or anything, just, yeah. Stuff that makes you question, am I actually awake right now? Okay, just a couple more pixels and we should have this covered. Yep, okay, so we now know the area for that. And next up, let's do the box itself. The question is, can I get away with texturing all of these sides exactly the same? And I'm thinking, probably. Don't think I will though, just in case it turns out to be a problem. So again, this is like double the resolution it should be, so scale it down. Hey, would you look at that? We're making much better use of our texture sheet now. So I'm going to make these square even though they're actually not, just because that's what kind of like a classic game asset would probably have done, just to use all the pixels. Okay, how's that look in context? Let's experiment a bit here and see if we can get it to look about right. That's probably about, let me try that again. That's probably about right. And then I'm actually gonna make a separate UV island for the top because why not? And separate UV island for this side. Kind of making a bunch of pixel fish, aren't we? Why does it always come down to fish? What's that all about? Just a nice pattern that we can use to make sure that we're filling the space evenly and correctly. Oops, I missed one of the islands. Oh well. Fixed. Oh, I didn't mean for those to weld together. Fortunately I can just separate them off like that. There we go. Okay, next up we need to texture this correctly. So I think it's laid out in the same orientation, so I can probably just go to here and start making some new colors for popcorn. Turn off palette lock. I actually remember to do it this time. Unprecedented, I know. Right, so this is kind of like in the shade. So that kind of like sort of, what do you call the color pop? This is actually probably just a color called popcorn, right? There's a color called something else, but it's kind of like sort of off-white color, right? And I'm thinking it gets less saturated and a little brighter towards the kind of like brighter end. It becomes more kind of saturated yellow as it gets darker, just to help kind of give it that kind of like sort of like buttery kind of look to it. And it eventually goes down to like nearly black. All right. Let's try and trace the rough outline of the bucket we put on top of it. I think it's going to be about there. Oh, it's rotated. That's unexpected. Okay. Let's change the origin back to the median point so it's not, because it's rotating around like the top left corner of the image. Okay, that's closer, I guess. Yep, that'll probably do. So a bit of a play around these kind of vertices so we can get a bit less distorted. That'll probably do. Okay, so we can basically just scrub off the bottom 2 rows. And looks like a single line of pixels up there. And maybe extend it down the right hand side slightly. There we go. Oh, we need a few pixels underneath there as well. Oh, UV padding this is going to be fun, isn't it? Anyway. So it's going to get kind of like more shady towards the back as it's going to be kind of like facing the chairs, which are going to have occlusion. What shape would the shadow be on this? I guess it would kind of like tend to the middle like that, right? Yeah, I kind of like that. And man, this does not look anything like popcorn right now, does it? It's going to be quite noisy, I think, you know, have a bit of kind of like grit to it that'll kind of give it the right sort of look of, say, a stack of things. But the colours are definitely going to need some work. And maybe I should have like some flecks of the kind of like carpet colour around the outside just to make it look a bit less, you know, a bit more broken up than that. Okay, so darken this quite a bit. The classic curse of me always making things way too bright returns. Okay, that's about right. Next up, this is too bright. It needs to be a bit more intermediate, a bit saturated maybe. Right, there we go. That's starting to look a bit more like it. So let's grab some carpet colors from the outside and just put a few kind of like flecks in here and there. And with the low resolution, that should look vaguely like it's kind of like got a rough edge, not, you know, rather than just being like a big stack of polygons. Not quite, not quite. We'll keep trying it. It might look good eventually. How's that look? I'll stick with that for now, but I'm not sure about that. Let's start shading them towards the back as well because it's going to be sitting on top of a tile that has a bit of shadow towards the back. Oh hey, that's starting to look better actually. Wait, have I got the right colours here? That'd be why it looks weird. I've got the wrong colours. Using like the chair colours rather than the carpet colours. Does that look better? There we go. It kind of looks now like it's sort of like a separate entity sitting on top. So next thing is I'm probably going to shade the ones around the edges. Something like that will do. And maybe just add a few more speckles here and there, just to kind of like really make it look like there's a bit of noise, a bit of grit to it, because it's obviously a pile of tiny objects. How's that look? Okay, it's starting to look like something. It's just the joy of low poly and low pixel art stuff, is it just make a bunch of random pixels and contextualize it properly, and the brain will just go, yeah, it's probably a pile of popcorn, probably. Okay, so next up we need to texture the actual box. So, yeah, I'm going to use some, I'll use these colors as a base and then work it out from that. Yeah, it's probably going to have that sort of classic sort of red and white stripe down the side. So, again, just pasting some more colors. Probably didn't need 4 colors for this, but whatever, it's the template, isn't it? So let's do kind of like alternating kind of like red and white stripes. It's going to be getting darker towards the bottom. Helps if you use the right color. And just kind of like fading to a lighter red towards the top. And then the other thing we're going to do is we're going to use a couple of the colors from here just to kind of make it look like it's embedded slightly. Not quite. In fact, I've kind of got it the wrong way around. The mound should kind of like have the pixels, not the edges. So let's just sort that now. So it should be kind of this darkest kind of color in the middle here. And like maybe a fleck of the light color. No, maybe just darkest all the way around. That doesn't look terrible. I'm just going to hide the 3D cursor because it's actually quite distracting. There we go. Right, so pretty much do the exact same thing on this side. Again, I might actually lighten this front up very slightly. And maybe put like a bit here, because it's actually kind of like a raised bit, right? And then have kind of like the, basically repeat this kind of pattern on this side, on the front side. And then maybe just put a little bit of sort of noise on the front, just like this, to make it look a bit like it's partially submerged. There we go, that's looking pretty good. That'll do. Just shade some of these pixels a bit lighter as we're doing the shading on the side of the box instead. And again, zoom out a bit, kind of like, squint a bit as if, make your eyes work a bit like a CRT to kind of like smudge that all together, and that actually doesn't look bad. The top is going to, because they usually have that kind of, so the bottom slightly raised, right? And they're going to have that sort of like insert where they're kind of like, I don't know whether they're glued or pressed or what into the outer frame, but I want to have like a bit of a shadow just to hint at that. And maybe have that shadow darkest at the front because the light is kind of like predominantly from the front. Yeah, okay. And then I'm actually going to darken this slightly along here to kind of like support that idea. Okay, all right. And then we just need to do the other side. And I'm going to do a lazy, and I'm just going to mirror it and then just adjust it as required, if required. So that just needs to be a bit darker down the bottom. Just because it's kind of like in the side that's kind of like pointing away from the light. So we're not going to use the lightest shades at all on the side. We're going to go slightly darker all the way along. Right, I might desaturate this a bit or lighten it slightly, just so it looks a bit more like paper and less like sort of grey card. Okay, it looks pretty good. And then perhaps do something similar with the red colour. There we go. Damn, that's one fine looking box of popcorn, isn't it? If it wasn't already on the floor, I'd probably eat that. Okay, so let's get that into engine. So I'm just going to position it back at 000 so that the exporter doesn't move it around. And export. Okay, let's put it in the scene. Oh, I should probably name it something as well. Yeah, there we go. It's just called base, and it's base, but it's not base. Okay, so let's start putting this under variables, shall we? Right. I'm going to start migrating from, because like previously I would have called this, you know, because it's a static variable, I would have like included the full name in here. However, I'm going to start just using the word static, because if I use the word static for every static variable, there's no way it could possibly collide, right? Doesn't, even if I call a variable here the same as something in a different file, they're both prefixed with static, and they're both static, so they can't possibly leak. So it also means copying stuff between files will be easier. Still a bit wordy, but less wordy than it was before. So let's also create something for our popcorn object. I start thinking about this. I'm going to start having quite a few kind of objects in the world that you can kind of interact with, and they're all going to do roughly the same thing, which is the protagonist walks up to them, and then something happens. Maybe it like spawns a dialogue tree or something. But you're going to have that idea of like having the protagonist and the interactive objects being clickable. So that sounds like something that could use a system. We might also want the ability to have, just for the sake of keeping this relatively simple, having kind of like points in the world that get walked between. So let's have a look through our camera and see what we're up to. Okay, that'll probably do. And given we've positioned it in here, it should position correctly when we export. So for now, just going to basically copy this code and make it use the popcorn mesh instead. Oh yeah, I didn't actually use that variable I just created. There we go. And there it is. Isn't it beautiful? So let's just commit that, because that's actually a small amount of progress. Oh, I've actually got quite a lot of uncommitted stuff. I should really get on that. Okay. So next up, we need to drop in the protagonist and the angel, and then start working on a system that allows them to navigate from wherever they are to that. Now, in this scene, sort of a direct line from wherever they're standing to wherever you go would work. However, one of the later scenes, that's not going to be the case. Now, I need to have a bit of a think about how I'm going to handle navigations. It's kind of like the two, for a simpler game like this, where you don't directly control the player, there's almost kind of like two different schools of thought, and one of them is more complex than the other. So I can either go, oh, what was it called? Oh, it's called a path node, wasn't it? Yeah. Oh. So yeah, the sort of modern way of doing it, and almost every engine has this feature, is the idea of having a nav mesh, right? Having basically kind of like a 3D model that basically describes where characters are able to go. Most games only use it for AI. I plan on also using it for the player. But there is a simpler version of it that Unreal Engine 3 used prior to the introduction of nav meshes, which is kind of like path nodes. But it looks like Unreal Engine 3 has been erased entirely from the the hive mind that is the internet. Which, to be fair, oh, I think that's a screenshot there. Yeah, yeah. They had like apples for icons. So you place these apples everywhere, and the AI agents would kind of like walk to an apple, and then they would like walk to another one and another one. They meant that like they kind of like form orderly queues and kind of like walk like round corners like this. Like very very sort of segmented way of doing it. Whereas navigation meshes allow for a bit more freedom. Now, a navigation mesh, ideally I wouldn't be like coding that by hand, I'd be kind of like importing it. So maybe I make like a special case sort of import for navigation meshes. Okay, how am I going to do that? So I guess it could be something as simple as if a mesh is called, nav mesh, it's treated specially. Yeah, I think I'll do that for now. Yeah, I don't really, I think that's actually quite a good call thinking about it. So let's go into edit mode. Let's rotate this 90 degrees. And, oh, that's some spicy Z fighting. Let's lift it up slightly. Just very slightly. And I guess got sort of path around this a bit. Is there a nice material I could put on this that make it nice and easy to read? I don't know. Yeah, it doesn't need to be like hyper dense. Just enough that you can kind of see what's going on. Oh yeah, I've also not got the, that would help, wouldn't it, if I had the overlays on so I could see what I was working with. Okay, so that should be enough, probably. Might also just add some other test stuff in just so I can make sure this is actually working. Let's call that nav mesh. And we'll be looking for that as a special case in the import script. So yep, okay, so that should make the importer fail. That's interesting. The importer didn't fail. What? And the reason that should make the importer fail is that we never told it which material to use. I guess there's no way in OBJ files to actually deselect a material, right? You can only select a material, you can't deselect one, so it just happened to inherit the material from the previous thing in the list. I also mistyped that, I typed nav nesh. I'm 100% awake, I swear. Okay, so I'm going to hand edit this file to put it further up, just so that it's, just so we're going to be reproducing the bug that I know is going to exist. So yeah, so it's saying that you can't add faces before selecting materials. So next up, I need to go to my OBJ importer. Do I have in here? Yeah, I've already got the bull thing imported. So, right, then this is some very stateful code, and there's probably going to be things I've forgotten about this. So let's try and figure this. Which is better? Is it to store a bool saying whether or not the current thing is nav mesh, or is it better to... Or is it better to just check every time? How often is it going to be important? Well, I guess thing number one is we need to skip basically all of this if we're importing a nav mesh. Okay, it goes down like a very different path if it's importing a nav mesh. Okay, so we're going to end up with a lot of conditional logic everywhere. So I'm kind of like voting for the flag, just where I only have to do the check once. Okay, so when we actually... Where are we actually assigning this object name? Where is it? Ah, there it is. So here's where we'll be comparing it. So, C does have a string comparison function, but it kind of does annoying things where if you try and compare two strings of different length, so for example, navmesh and navmesh1234, it'll say they're the same because technically there's no different characters between them. It's the length that's different. And I believe that was actually the root cause of the bug that allowed the DS to be cracked because they used string comparison for the security key and they just made one of the security keys blank. So no character's different, one of them's just blank. So we need to check both the length. Oops, why would I be comparing it to a string? I'm just definitely not awake. And then we're comparing it to the word navmesh, and if it's 0, there's no difference. Actually, we can assign this here. Okay, so then we're going to do slightly different things depending upon whether or not it's a nav mesh. So for example, we don't need to allocate texture coordinates or material face material indices because the nav mesh is just a big what they call a polygon soup. Now, one of the things about a nav mesh is you actually want to be like, it's a bit differently structured to a normal mesh because a normal mesh, I'm going to end up using a different data type for it. A normal mesh is a just basically a big list of triangles, right? It doesn't really have structure. You don't really care which edges connect. But in the case of, say, this, right? You actually just want to be able to look up at any time. I'm in this sort of quad. I'm heading this way. And I think I've crossed the edge. Is there somewhere I can go? Or if you're like, trying to pathfind from here to here, you want to be able to go, right, which edges connect to which faces so I can quickly find my way around. Oh, I missed a pixel. That's going to bother me. I'm just going to fix that. Where is it? Where's that missing pixel? It's there. There you go. Crisis averted. Yeah, so it's actually a very different data structure. While we're kind of collecting it from something with the same format, what we're actually doing with it is almost entirely different. See, we don't need to allocate any of this stuff really. Or this. I'm just going to check that, because I think I do merge vertices together with the same value. I just want to make sure that I do that later rather than sooner. Yeah, I do. Okay, because I think it's an end object. Yeah, there it is. Yeah, I do sort of like remapping of vertices in here. So basically, I find kind of like ones you've already used. So that's fine. That means that we can keep vertices that were separate in the original file separate for nav meshes. Okay, so this will probably crash the importer when we run it now. That's interesting. It's still failing on the material check. I would have thought that would The one nice thing is that whereas in our main game we can't really like output to the console easily, we can here. So I'm going to see if I can figure out what's going on. What do we get from here? How long does it think the text is? Oh yeah, I should probably also put a new line in there so I can see where it ends. And I should probably also write out the name it's reading just so I can find it in the list. Every time I edit this this script, it's actually recompiling every single mesh we have, so that's why it's spamming pretty hard. So you can see it's doing the characters as well. Oh yeah, why did I think the word nav mesh has 6 characters in it? It obviously has 7. What? Man, I am unsuited to the handling of heavy machinery right now, shall we say? There we go. That's more than what we expected. So, in regards to like what's it output here? Ah, because I've reordered the file, these numbers are right. Okay. Yeah, these are basically the numbers of the vertices to put in, but because I've moved this from the bottom to the top, the numbers are no longer correct. So let's just re-export. Now we know that material handling bug has been fixed. And try a fresh build. And it crashed, which is what we expect. Because the end object code will be trying to export this like it's a nav mesh. So we're going to need completely different code here. I should probably also get started on the actual data structure that this is going to generate code for. The two kind of, interleave somewhat. Okay. So that's still crashing. That's interesting. I wonder where it's crashing. This is one of the things when the C program typically crashes, you don't get like a stack trace, you don't get an exception message. You typically just get, kind of like a system level sort of exit code kind of deal. It's less than ideal. So now we've got to try and figure out where it's happening and why. Could it be that one of these is not being initialized earlier in the code? Nope, I don't think it's that. So it never hit this line. It must be a bug further up then when we're actually appending a face. I think I know what it is. Where's the bit where it's gonna be a bit in here where it's yeah, here we go. This is the bit where it's actually appending, so like the this is where it's reading in these face numbers, right? At the moment, it's still trying to record the fact that it has a texture coordinate and it has a normal. But we're not using any of that, so we can just skip that. So in here, we're going to have to check if it's, say, nav mesh. This might fix it. Oh yeah, that fixed it. That was a crash. Okay. That's obsolete. I used to encode the texture sizes into the file it made. No longer do that because that was stupid. Okay, so that's where we're going to be kind of generating our code from our nav mesh. So next up, let's put in a. How am I actually going to store the nav mesh? Because it's. I guess it might be a component. I suppose it might be. The only question with that is, would moving the entity with the nav mesh move everything on it? Because I guess you kind of expect that. And you'd expect for objects to be able to cross from one nav mesh to another. This gets kind of complicated. It means that entities end up sort of parented to a nav mesh, but they can also move around. It's kind of complicated, isn't it? Let's provisionally put it in here. I might end up renaming this kind of folder from entities from kind of like scene, because it's kind of like more to do with scenes. And I'm going to make an effort to stop ending things with a suffix of t when they're a type, because that's actually a reserved thing. Not something you should be doing in kind of like client code. So let's do that. So let's also bring in our WASM header. Is it WASM? WASM? Just WebAssembly? What do we call it? Who knows? So we're also going to yeah, we're going to have like ID numbers for things like that. Oh, we can also bring in our good old data structures index. Going to use that. So we're going to have, how are we going to do this? I'm thinking for each triangle, we're going to need something representing a triangle, right? And although I would normally do structured arrays, chances are you'd only be looking at one triangle at a time, realistically, except for the edge crossing data. Yeah, in fact, the most intensive thing you're going to be doing with this is when you're kind of like flood filling out to search for a, to find a short path, in which case you'll be hitting the list of which edges face into which triangles and not a lot else. So yeah, I'll put that in its own array. And we're going to have to store the number of triangles. Yes, number of triangles, and then, oh god, my brain is so fried. Okay, and then we're going to need the indices that are available over each edge. So what do we call that? For each triangle, for each triangle, 3 indices. Index of the triangle over edge 8B, BC, and CA. Where there is no such triangle, I think I've got like an index none I could probably use. I think I have. Yeah. Okay, that should be good. I also need like locations of the triangle, but like I'm probably going to put that in later. For now, I'm going to focus on getting this kind of fleshed out. So at this point, we need to kind of go over all the faces that we found, convert them into a list of triangles, and then, oh god, I'm struggling so much tonight. We need to figure out which triangles share edges with one another, and we need to handle the case that there may be none, or there may be many. I'm thinking many would be an error because it's ambiguous where you should go when you walk over the edge. And we also need to handle cases like, say, if the edges are backwards. Yeah. So for example, to get an example of what I mean, if you say had, if you had say, let me just get rid of that vertex. Oh, what have I done? And if I say had this, but this was the other way up to this, that would actually be invalid because, or would it? Or would you just say it's not a connection because, you know, one of them's the other way up to the other? Don't know. I'm too ill to be decisive. Oh my god. Okay, so we've got a nav mesh. Let's go through and let's start off by counting how many total triangles we're going to have. In theory, I should probably have done this in both paths because I end up with multiple implementations of this thing where it kind of like builds triangles. Don't care about materials, don't care about textures, don't care about that at all. Okay, it's not done in there. Aha, here's the bit that we're after. Yeah, I'm just going to steal this and put it up in here. Because this was done by me that was way more awake. So we don't care about the material because we're not working materials here. So this was the bit where before it was doing kind of like a remapping thing where it was trying to find, it tries to find vertices that use more than once and only export them once because it means it only has to transform them once. It's like a performance enhancement. But we don't want that for nav meshes because vertex splits are usually intentional. But we do want to eliminate vertices that are completely unused. Okay, so yes, so we still want this remapping step. It's kind of annoying. I guess we can do one scan and we can calculate both the number of triangles and the how many vertices are actually used. Yeah, we'll just steal all of this. This is all good. Oh god, we're nearly out of time. I've got almost nothing done today. The kind of like as Denise said, post mortem. The kind of like post stream summary is going to be made some popcorn. Oh no. Never gonna do the game in time at this rate. Oh well. And this if statement can go. We're never using that. That was part of the material check. Now this is the bit where it was yeah, this bit where it was like running through and it's trying to find if that it's trying to find if the exact position of the vertex had been used before. We don't really care. We're always going to be adding a new one to the list. It's just so that we're not exporting vertices that are unused. What's this index? Where does that come from? Where have I got that from? Oh no. Where did that come from? Oh, okay. This is coming back to me now, yeah. Because I basically have all of the kind of like all the vertices in a really big long line. So if you've got 50 faces and they've all got 3 vertices, that's 150 indices. I guess. I think that's where I was going with it. Now I need to do that. So now I'm going to copying them over. You know, I need to allocate anything here. All good. Right, took me a second there to remember why. Yeah, so oh, this is getting complicated. I'm getting the location. I'm getting the sort of ID number of the vertex, and then I'm checking have we remapped it. If not, that okay. If not, then record it and move on to the next one. Okay. And we can calculate the number of triangles based on the number of vertices less 2 because a quad is 4 vertices and 2 triangles. Yep, that holds up. Okay. Wait, we didn't need to do any of this. Oh my god. We need to count the number of triangles and then... No, we didn't. We can just allocate... Man, I'm not in a good way. Right. Right. Let's put that loop back in. No, we're not. Yes, we are. Oh god, I'm just... My brain is done. Okay, so then we're running through all the faces in the object, and we are... Right, okay. I think I'm almost there. I'm almost there with this. I need to allocate more memory for our... triangle indices. Yep, I got it. Don't worry, I need about 2 more minutes of this suffering before I just pack it in and go to go to bed for the night. Okay, that's right, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, so allocated more memory for these indices, and then we're just going to write them out. So this should be nice and simple. So we're going over the triangles, which is the number of vertices less 2. So we have hang on. So all of the triangles in, I'm making like a fan, right? The first vertex is going to be shared by all of them. And then we're going to have a second one that kind of trails behind. And we're going to work through kind of like pairs. That sort of makes sense, I think. That should make us a fan, I think. Yeah, I'm gonna call it there because I'm not functioning. Thank you very much for suffering through this with me, and hopefully I have more energy tomorrow. Have a great evening.